Hello, welcome in. Get out the cold. Remember, shoes off at the front door. Get some snacks and come take a seat and join us here in the Music Shack with both
Ray?
and Jack. And we're back with another reaction of sorts. But I just want to jump in before Ray starts and just say a huge, thank you for last week's reaction to Chapel Roan. That was something new for us, and I mean we can tell that this sort of the style works, and people want to see that, so we'll definitely be having more in the future. We've got a long list internally. We've still not sent it over to each other. We definitely need to do that. But I think the comments, and we had a bunch of issues, or I edited it stupidly at the beginning and didn't take into consideration the copyright of YouTube. I'm an old style person. I didn't realize they changed the style of it, but it's fine.
That was fun, but thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, and just to everybody that subbed and to everybody that may come back from that video and potentially hasn't subbed yet, if you want to do that'd be cool, but if not, I fully understand. But 824 views we're talking about. That's crazy. We're recording this on Tuesday because I've been a little under the weather, but thank you so much.
Yeah. This week we kind of have a similar style video to last week. Last week I introduced Jack to Chapel Roan. This week there is a new album out that we are going to react to. We talked about it when it was announced. We talked about the single when it came out. We totally teased that we were going to do this when the album came out, and now we have to do it, right? Yeah. So Ariana's 7th album is out, Eternal Sunshine. It's, in my opinion, a really, really incredible album. I didn't have very high hopes for the album. Both me and Jack have listened to it already on our own time because, honestly, we don't have that kind of willpower. It came out on Friday and it's already Tuesday, so we ain't waiting. But we are going to listen to the album together. We're going to go through each song. We're going to vibe, and then we're going to talk about each song. We're going to talk about what we think about the album. I've been a really big fan of Ariana since I was a little kid, since before yours truly, Victoria's days. I've been a huge fan of Ariana. My friends who've known me since back then know that. And I feel like I kind of lost hope in her after Positions. I did not like Positions at all, so how good this album was made me happy. But I'll get into more details as we listen to it. Jack, any thoughts before we start?
No, I am someone who's not very clued in on Ariana's sort of music in her story. I don't know really why. I think just her writing's never really been something that I've been super involved with. I think her style is very unique, especially the style that she's breaking into and she's sort of finding her sound with. But I think previously it was just never I think you always have those artists that you will listen to some songs, but you just never really explore the rest of the discography, and I think that Ariana is one for me. But I really respect sort of her writing, and I agree with I heard songs throughout the recent albums as they were coming out and as they were getting released, and the albums were sort of being released, but there was nothing that really stood out for me, especially from Positions. Nothing really got me. I'm a huge Mac Miller fan, so I desperately tuned in to sort of even just not even songs that were about him or that had tones of him. But I think just the whole of Thank You Next was an album that was written in a way that I had just really enjoyed. And before that, Sweetener, again, if I was to go off every album, I could pick songs that I've listened to, but it's just someone I've never really discovered someone I've never really sort of went into listening to the discography. But I'm really excited, and I was really excited about this album just to see where it went, and after listening to it, I can say that I am really excited to listen to it again, and I'm grateful that I did listen to it because it is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, with that, we'll get started with the intro song, End of the World.
What an intro song.
How can I tell if I'm in the right relationship? relationship. Then I had this interaction I've been thinking about for like 5 weeks. Would you want me there if the moon went dark tonight? Would you be the one on mine?
I feel like this song is like such a good introduction to the concept of the album. It's like she's talking about questioning her relationship and thinking like, oh, there's this other guy that like feels like makes me happy. Like, do you even think about me like we used to, kind of thing? And like it almost sets the scene for like what's to come, which I absolutely love.
Like, pretty much, I wrote some notes like throughout some of these songs, or like prior listening time. And I think this was like, I think the first time I listened to it when like I wrote this one, but it genuinely was just like, it's sort of interesting because end of the world could be referred to as like, you initially think when you break up like it is the end of the world, like that thought goes in through your head. But it's also like interesting because it's the intro, so it's like end of the world or end of this relationship, but intro to something else. So I think that's really a cool play on words. But the starting off the vibes, I think the production on this is stunning. Like it's like you said, it sets up the vibe, or sets up the whole scene, both within the lyrics and both and with the sort of style, and the wording is definitely it sort of like instantly grabs you and is like, okay, we're in this space of like closing off a relationship and entering something else, which is I don't know, it's just the way it's done. I think listening to this was like something, because as you said, you weren't really sure on how to feel about this album before it came out, but like this pulling you in, like what do you expect? Like I think this is,
it's such a good thing, for the listener to be like, okay, this is about to get real, kind of thing. But let's listen to the next one. I think the next one is Bye. Like I think it really sets up the scene for Bye too. Like I'm questioning my relationship, and so I'm leaving, kind of thing. But yeah, let's listen to it.
I don't know what it is. See, at the start of this song, it's like that that chirp sound is like such a. I feel like I've heard that before.
Wait, let's go back. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Let me go back and listen to it again.
Like that sound. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. That's been in her music before, yeah.
This is produced by Max Martin.
You're right.
So I don't know if Max Martin's done.
Yeah, she's worked a lot with Max Martin before.
That'll be why.
That song has such a vibe. Like I love the sound, and it's interesting to me because like, I mean, we've only gone through 2 songs, but like just this sound, it's like so much different than Yes and, which is like so much different from what I was expecting for this album. So like I love it. What do you think about the song, Jack?
So I will initially say I think this is, off the album, this is probably one of the weakest written, because it's not.
Yeah.
It relies very much on the chorus and like the intro, the bye boy bye thing. But I think what it's trying to say, it gets it across really well, and it like, I think it just instantly cements like, and like within the first like track of, or without, obviously the intro was the first track, but I think it does a really good job at like cementing the fact that it's sort of like she's gone and it's done, but at the same time the lyrics within this are really hard hitting. I think there's a lyric in it which is, "This ain't the first time I've been hostage to these tears. I can't believe I'm finally moving through my fears," which I think is so like, within obviously the track being like maybe the weakest written, I think there is some lyrics that stand out, and this is one of them. But the sound of it is very. I think if I was to choose a song that could have done well on charts, that wasn't Yes and, that had similar sound, I maybe
It
would.
was this, yeah.
Yeah, I'd choose this. Yeah.
I think that this is the kind of song that does well on radio because it's not so intricate that normal people
Yeah.
won't understand it.
And
Just
not
like
saying
hearing
that
it
we're
once
like
in their car.
not normal people, but like if you're looking at it as like a stan or like a fan perspective, like
Yeah.
there's not going to be more reading
Yeah.
into it that other than literally just the lyrics. That's not
But
like yeah.
I think it's such an important song that is the first track because
Yeah.
it's like it's just like really interesting because it's just her being like, I realize that I am not myself in this relationship
Mhm.
and I need to find myself again because this isn't who I am. And even though it's like so like simple lyrically, it gets that across because having that as the basis of the story helps us go through the rest of the album where she is doing exactly that, trying to find who she is and rediscover herself, which she feels like she hasn't had in a long time. So I think this is such a good setup for that storyline and like a good way to start it off.
Yeah, and like obviously with it not, I said it's not the best lyrically, but it like when it does stand out, it stands out, and I think that's what you said is it gets the story across really well. Like it gets it like initially, obviously the first track sort of sets you into the story with like the like the title and stuff, and like obviously the lyrics through the first track, but then this like cements it, and it what it says is really sort of crucial in getting the point across that like this is like very nearly like the end of this relationship that we're going to hear of, until we move on to the sort of like the intro to the new sort of like the new situation. But it's again, like, I'm stronger than I think. Usually I join you on the floor, but this dance ain't for me. Boy, turn the music up. Maybe someday we'll look back with love. Didn't think you'd lose me. Now it's just too late to choose me. Like, it obviously is stating something in this album, and because I think it allures to it multiple times, is that maybe there is something like it wasn't just an easy factor of like dropping them and like moving on. It was like there was obviously a lot of like maybe feelings that weren't so like sort of mutual initially, and then it's turned into like sort of like a second thought type thing where you know what I'm trying to say.
I think that like I think it's really interesting, and it's almost like a really empowering song from a breakup standpoint. Like, like fuck you, kind of like I know that I'm better without you, so I'm gonna leave. But it's really interesting because the next song is Don't Want to Break Up Again, which we'll listen to now. But in my opinion, Don't Want to Break Up Again is almost like the other side of the coin, which I think any single person going through a breakup doesn't just feel the feelings that are expressed in Bye, they also feel the feelings that are in Don't Want to Break Up Again. And it's like, it's so interesting putting those tracks back to back, especially opening up this album, just to be like, for her to acknowledge, like, hey, I can experience this bad bitch energy, but I still am scared and whatnot. And I think that a lot of people who write albums feel like they need to embrace either like a really sad energy or a really like bad bitch energy. And the reality is that every single person going through something hard experiences both of those feelings. And so for her to put both of those feelings on the album back to back is like, I think is really special. But we'll listen to it now and then we'll talk about it more.
Okay. This is sad. So I was with the title, I was a little bit like, okay, so where's this going? Before I listened to it, I was like, where's this going? Like, Don't Want to Break Up Again. Is she sort of sense, and is she sort of feeling like the way that we sometimes see in these records is where they talk about the sort of the initial like the breakup, and then they end up like sort of talking about the feelings, or like even just talking about their experience of like going back and like maybe experiencing the same stuff again, and then like leading to this situation again. But I think someone I seen someone, and I can't remember where, I think it might have been on Genius when I was looking at the track originally, and they described it as it's the hangover of Bye. And I think
Yeah, I think that's a quote from an interview
and
from
it
her.
sounds like that's like, I think that describes it like perfectly.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and I remember just the first time listening to this, and I wish that was, see, if I had on video the first time I listened to this, see, after seeing a verse, like the first verse, like I fall asleep crying, you turn up the TV, you don't want to hear me, one more sleepless night, I was like, I was just like head in the hands. I was like, that's
so
like,
sad.
it's horrible. Like there's no worse feeling than feeling like sort of like ultimately like all you want is that, like, to be noticed by that person, but it's like for them to like one thing, not even like one thing to not notice how you're feeling, but like to fully like avoid it and like sort of be like, okay, well, I've got better, or like I can't be bothered with it or whatever. That's heartbreak. Like that is so crushing.
It's such an awful feeling to be in a relationship and like still like you have someone who should be by your side through everything and anything, and then to still feel alone, and that is awful and definitely a sign that you should probably break up. But like I think it's such a good song in terms of like expressing her fear, because I think from what I know, like, I mean, the song is literally called Don't Want to Break Up Again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like she's talking about all these fucked up things that that she experiences in the verses, and then in, in the chorus she's like, you know, like this has to end, but I can't. Like I can't do it because I don't want to break up again. And it's just like I think it's because like her, when I think back like to, you know, when she started her career, like I cannot think of a time where Ariana has been single
Yeah.
for a really long time. And I mean that's still kind of the case, I guess. But I think it's like a thing of like you just go through a relationship and you experience like the happy honeymoon phase, and then you break up, and then you do it over and over again, and you finally think that you found the person, and then you have to do it again. It's probably the most awful feeling, but it's also like really needed, which we'll see in like the rest of the album, how much it's needed. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and just the topics it sort of talks on, I think in verse 2 she obviously says, I made it so easy, spent so much on therapy, blamed my own codependency, but you didn't even try. When you finally did, it was at the wrong time. So again, bringing up the whole sort of like bit too late, like you started trying way too late, like you probably realised that I was clocked out, and by that time you that was when you were trying, which has been brought up multiple times. And then won't abandon me again for you and I, which is beautiful, like heart-wrenching songwriting. Like you won't abandon, like you sometimes, like I'm definitely someone who loses myself in like the relationship I'm in, which is something, is maybe why I've not dated in like 5 years, because that's something that you need to work through, and I think it's not healthy sometimes. I mean it's maybe not healthy ever, but it's like how bad it gets is maybe obviously how like healthy it depends it is. But I think you don't purposely do it, but it's like so easy to do. But it's something again that once a relationship ends, it crushes you, and I think that's what she's talking on here, is like definitely bringing up the whole fact of like, I don't want to break up again. Like she's beyond like sort of the point of where she can't mentally do it anymore. Like she doesn't want to go through it again because of how much it destroys her. And I think talking about this sort of like the codependency, the having to go obviously through therapy, like it won't abandon me again for you, like it talks about how hard it hits her, which is like sad, and it just goes to deep level of like our songwriting and our ability. And again, I think I said this during it, but her vocals are sometimes are probably one of my favorite on the album and on this song.
There's a lot of layering, and like the vocal range she displays on this track like is incredible. And obviously like Ariana's vocals is like what makes her stand out compared to other artists. So I think, yeah, definitely they're incredible on this track and in the whole record. I also think that her vocals have gotten a lot better since Wicked, which I didn't even think was possible, like other than like her enunciation. I think her enunciation is like so much better now, which is great. Great for me who wants to understand what she's saying.
Yeah, so true. Do you think it's because she's finding her sound? Like, do you think it's because she's found her sound that she now like has more confidence in it, and it's like sort of allows her to then reach a new level, like allows her to explore a wee bit more, and maybe have like because of that reached like a new sort of.
I think it's that, and then I also think it's like, I think Thank You Next is all kind of similar to this record in terms of like enunciation, like was better on Thank You Next almost, and I think it is because she's like happier with what she's writing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I mean, a lot of, like, I think this record is similar to Thank You Next, and not to just get very retrospective before we even finish the record, but like it's very similar to Thank You Next in that Ariana has writing credits on, I think, the majority of the songs, if not all. And she also has production credits on this album, I think, again, for majority of the songs, if not all, which she had like a home studio in her place in the UK, so she was able to do that, which I think is really cool. And not many artists actually produce their own songs, and I think that because she produced on this record, same way with Thank You Next, she did a lot of the writing and production. It makes her like more confident with it, whereas like I know with like Yours Truly and My Everything and stuff, it was all like ghostwriters. Or like, you know, and she wasn't on the writing credits for any of it either. They were just other writers, and she was singing the songs. But I think when it's not really your voice, you're not as confident with like getting up there and singing it as well. If that makes sense.
No, I think that's a really good point. I honestly think, obviously I'm not a songwriter or singer, but I think I feel like part of being a songwriter is like to explain, like share your experiences and like to share your story, right? So I think it's so hard to do that when you don't write the music, and like that might be very controversial because there's a lot of like a way a lot of like smaller like artists make their living is by writing songs for other people, and I don't think it's bad because a lot of the people that do that write songs with the other person in the room. But see, when people write, so like a lot of people in the music industry do it where they write a song for themselves but it's given to someone else, and it sometimes works out. But I think if you're writing something that isn't like a pop hit, I think it needs to come from the heart, and when it comes from the heart, it means so much more. And it like does,
I think that it's interesting because I think in the 2010s era, like being a singer-songwriter, it didn't really matter. Like Taylor did it, Ed did it. There are definitely people who are like quite famous in that era who were singer-songwriters, but like you did not have to write your own music to be famous, I guess. Like Ariana like had the talent because she had an incredible voice. She still has an incredible voice, and she didn't need to have songwriting talent. I mean, Ariana like never grew up writing songs. She grew up in playing in musicals, right? Like that was her thing. Since she was a kid, she was a musical artist, and like and that's why she has the great voice, and that's why she can do things like Wicked and stuff, which other artists who are singer-songwriters probably can't do those kinds of things. But I think nowadays being a songwriter is much more valued because I think audiences care more about connecting with you as a person rather than just enjoying your music. And connecting with you as a person means connecting to your art and your music and the lyrics. And if you don't relate to the lyrics, if you as an artist don't relate to the lyrics, then you'll never relate to your fans because that is your connection to them. And I think that value has kind of changed over the years in the industry since like the 2010s era. Now in like the 2020s era, I think songwriting is more important. And I mean, she's shown that she can definitely do really good songwriting in this record. Same with like Thank You Next. And I want her to continue to do that because clearly she makes the best records when she does write the songs and she has a lot of creative control over it, and it's not just like what the label thinks is going to be popular.
Yeah, no, that's a really, like, it's a good point. I think, I don't know, there's different ways of looking at it, and I think what you've said is, it like makes a lot of sense. Like, coming from, like, there's an industry behind of what we know, right? That like we know it from like a certain a different angle, but
yeah,
like what you've said about how a lot more artists are like, it becomes sort of like it's a different area now, right? Like, fans are very connected to artists, and probably more than they ever have been. So like what you're saying about how they like to hear sort of the story from the artist, or like hear about their life, like I think it definitely connects more with the fans when it is like that sort of writing. But I think I just love to see, like, I think people like singers and songwriters have such beautiful ways of telling stories, so
yeah.
I love to just, like, I like to just
And
see what they have to say, pretty much.
I agree. I think it's great. And it doesn't mean that like those other songwriters aren't in the room. Like being a songwriter and not a singer, you still have a career. But like I think if you just look at like the best new artists of like recent last couple years, like Noah, Gracie, Olivia, like they all write their own music. And if you look at that kind of from the 2010s best new artists like Ariana and I don't know who else was a best new artist, and like Dua Lipa, like they didn't really write their own music in the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think quickly, if we were to sum up, Ray, who's an incredible artist, spent like 7 years under a record label that never let her really release stuff, and she was like, there was ideas that were coming up, and she was like, there was stuff that would have been perfect for her, but our label wouldn't allow her to. But now she's been able to write her own and like produce her own and like work with her own stuff. Like, she's one of the biggest artists like out at the minute. So it's like crazy. It just shows you like the power behind like being able to tell a story and like being able to like do things the way you want to do them. And like I think if we see Ariana happier with this and like writing and it works better for her, and she maybe feels a lot more confident doing it, then that's sick. It's so cool to see. But
It is interesting. I mean, Ariana's obviously on Republic, like, and Scooter Braun is famously her manager, you know. And now, like, I guess when like shit happened with Scooter, she got rid of him as her manager. She has a new manager. She's still working with Republic, but she's not working with Scooter anymore. And there's been like a lot of talk about how Scooter really like negatively impact her creativity and like what she wanted to do on her records. And like, you know, how he pushed her to release certain songs, and I'm sure that you know about those kinds of things, but I'm not going to go into it super deep. But I think this to be the first record she's released after like Scooter not being her manager anymore, etc., like I think it's a really big tell that potentially he was holding her back.
No words, but fuck Scooter Braun very much.
Yeah, honestly, fuck Scooter Braun. Anyway, we should probably move on. I think that the next track is like the start of like the healing part of this album, which I think is really great. I'm gonna play Saturn Returns Interlude and Eternal Sunshine and not pause in between the two, because the we can talk about them both after, but the transition between the two tracks
Oh,
is
it's
incredible.
stunning.
So I do not
Yeah.
want to interrupt it. Okay.
So good.
When we're all born,
There you go,
Saturn
that's it.
somewhere.
This
And
is stunning.
the
I love it.
Saturn
It's so
cycle
beautiful.
takes kind of floating along. Saturn comes along and hits you over the head.
The transition is beautiful. There's very like a high dream pop, like hyper pop like vibe from this, and I just love it. It's such an interesting
It's
thing.
so good. I love this bridge.
It's so good, right? I love it, but the line like "hope you feel alright when you're in her" is like just throws me off every single time.
Okay. Jack, do you want to start and talk about the Saturn's
Yeah.
interlude?
Shout out to dianagarland.com on YouTube, because that is sampled from there, and it's really beautiful. So it talks about being 29 and how 29 is incredibly important time of your life. And Ariana was, I think, 30 when writing the sort of, or like approximately like 20. So the return of like Saturn return is like approximately 29.5 years. So it's like, sorry, 29 to 30. So like Ariana was 30, sorry, suspectedly when writing probably most of this album. And it just talks about like how it's like one of the most important times, because well, I mean, she speaks, I love that it's sampled from this like random YouTube video, and like it's just so cool because it's like what the video's on like 48k views, and all the comments are like, here before the Ariana like, oh my god, I can't speak, Arianators flood the comments, like, thank you Ariana Grande. Like, it's so good.
That's so funny.
I don't even think she's commented on it, has she? No, she's not said it.
Huh?
No, has she said anything? No, the channel's been dead for 3 years, but like, I just love it.
That's great. This whoever Diana Garland is, she's probably making so much money.
Yeah. Just that sample, like, oh yeah,
Such a
Ariana
big
Grande
break.
definitely has to pay her like royalties or something for like being on like the full track of like that. But I love it. It's such a beautiful like thing, and I think even taking away the whole like the age thing of it, like I think just what is being said is like, I'll quickly run through it. We're all born Saturn somewhere, and the Saturn cycle takes around about 29 years. That's when we gotta wake up and smell the coffee, because it's, if we've just been sort of relying on our cleverness, or relying, just kind of floating along, Saturn comes along and hits you over the head, and says, wake up. It's time for you to get real about life and sort out who you really are. So I think this comes into play because this is like sort of the real transition of like the album, and like talking, I think this goes from like one relationship to the other, and it's sort of like it's like the wake up of like, you're not going back there, and it's time to like get real and like move on. Yeah. And the outro obviously of it is wake up, get real. So it's like, wake up, not happening, move on.
Yeah.
So it's stunning. Again, shout out to dianagarland.com on YouTube. We'll put a link in the description. Love it. I think it's really cool. I obviously don't know the terms behind it, but obviously it's been sampled, so some money's been transferred over, and I think that's really cool. Hopefully Diana Garland's got a bag from it, because shout out. But yeah, moving on to Eternal Sunshine, and that transition, that like, it's beautiful. I can't say it, like, it just flows so well into it.
And like the theme, like what is expressed in Saturn's Return interlude, like what you mentioned, like is fully like taken into Eternal Sunshine as well. I think that's like what also makes it really, really interesting. And I think that when Ariana and Dalton were going through all of those issues and breaking up, she must have been 29 and a half, because she turned 30 in June of 2023. So, and they announced their split, like, I don't know when their split was announced off the top of my head, but I think that early 2023 is probably a good shout for when all of these issues happened. So she might have actually been 29 and a half.
Okay, so that
which is
kinda
like
ties into it
crazy.
even more. Yeah, no, that is crazy. It's like a perfect time to like look at it and be like, okay, even it's happened more now than ever. Like the fact it's happened like 29.5 years into my life, like it just is like just a wake up call in general. It's like not even the fact that like a relationship's ended, but just I need to like sort of figure it out and get rid of them. I don't know what's happened, but I get rid of them.
I love the vibe in Eternal Sunshine, like the sound of it. I think it's such a good song. And I love the theme. Like it's really shitty because like obviously she talks about how she got cheated on in this song, and you know how they're like he was lying to her about a bunch of shit, and then like I think like it's just interesting. And then she obviously this is when she introduces like the new guy in her life, like with the I found a good boy and he's on my side, which will be like thought of, like mentioned a lot in the previous. But I think this is her, like this track is like, although it mentions all these things, like it is her coming to terms with like, okay, like I can't keep going through this like cycle of going from like bye to don't want to break up again feelings. I need to just like, I found someone else. I feel like I need to just move on and get out of this situation. And I think Saturn Returns is like such a good way to address that as well.
Yeah, and like I literally have no more to add to that, so I'm literally just going to tell you about the name and why it's that, because that was such a good way of summing up. So the album is called Eternal Sunshine. So this is the title track. So the title directly nods to the film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a film that stars Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Mark Ruffalo, like Elijah Wood, Kirsten Dunst, and Tom Wilkinson. But it's a rom like tragedy. But it's like the couple go and have like procedures to erase like the memories of each other after a breakup, which is seen in a music video for a later track. But it's like sort of resembling the whole of like how no matter what like you went through in a previous breakup, like it's still so hard to like do it, like to get rid of these memories and like to do it. So like even when they go in for this procedure, it's like a hard experience and a hard thing to do. So like no matter what, at least in this song she obviously talks about getting cheated on. So like no matter how shitty he was, like, and how like what he done, it's like still a hard thing to forget, because you have all these like good things as well that you have to like forget about as well. If you were to go in and try and forget everything, then you have to forget all these good things that happened, like the person that you became because of it, like the growing you done during it, like all these things go into it. But it's like obviously it's like the Eternal Sunshine comes from the name, and it sort of like plays on the topic of the film. But it's like I read something really thingy, and it was to talk about how she wanted obviously she would rather wipe her memory to forget about like to completely forget about the relationship because of the pain. But it's but the Eternal Sunshine, that like the eternal part of it is like now being haunted by our ex-lover, so it's like eternal, it's like eternal, so it's like forever. So it's like forever, like sunshine. Sunshine would be her ex in this case, but it's like the juxtapose of it. So it's like eternal haunting in a sense, which I think was really interesting. Like I because there's definitely highlights of it in the lyrics, but it just that view of it, like, so it's the Eternal Sunshine is like, it's sort of like the track where she's like, oh, I'm done, I'm over this, but it's like there's still going to be that haunting of like things that our ex done, clouding the relationship and clouding her in the future, which I think are really interesting. But I think it's just a beautiful track, and like the way it starts and everything it transfers into is like really good. There is you heard me definitely say during that where it's like there is some lyrics where I just like you love the song, but you're like there's just some lyrics like, yeah, you played me like Atari. It's like it doesn't really play into the song other than like apart from here, but it also makes me think of when did this film come out? Was it 20? Oh, it's 2004. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say if it's 2000.
It's pretty.
Not 2000. Sorry, if it's like 1980s, then it would mix in with the Atari line, but it doesn't. But it's just lines like that are a little bit like interesting. But
why does this fit into this?
Yeah. And like that, you like hope you feel alright when you're in her. But it's like I guess it's just like part of this like this narrative you're making, right? Like you're trying to tell a story. But it's such a good song, yeah.
So, Ariana did a video where she like showed the album to her label people, and like they did a video on that where like they were like reacting to it. It's like a 4-minute video. It's on her YouTube channel. But a quote from that YouTube video that I'm reading off of Genius right now is, "Eternal Sunshine feels like a centerpiece of the album to me. It's the glue that ties all of this fun with the sad." And it's like, I think we'll see in the next few tracks, like it's like it is the moment where like the sad kind of turns a little bit more into fun and self-discovery, but it is like a reminder of like this, like all of this fun stuff that's gone on in my life or whatever is because something awful happened to me. And like I think that's like such an important way to like have that as a centerpiece to the album. I think it's an incredible song to be the centerpiece. But with that, let's move on to the Supernatural Witch. We'll probably start like this kind of the second half of this album for us.
Yeah, some R&B vibes. Let's go.
I think this is one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
It is good, to be fair. It's just the layer in this as well. Like that in the background. It's so good. It's that like little beat changer. It's like so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like the song's like really fun. I mean, it's pretty much just about her meeting a guy, them being in that honeymoon phase where everything feels perfect and like it's all she can think about. And it's the vibe, like it's such a simple track. Like we've talked so much about the tracks that came before this because I feel like they're a lot more complex. This one, like the meaning of it is very simple, but the sound, like it's so R&B. I don't know what about it. It's just like it's so fun. It makes me want to dance, and I just love it.
Yeah, there's literally one thing I have to say. It's obviously the alluding is like there's like obviously the chorus is like, "This love's possessing me, but I don't mind at all." So it's like there's like some outer world like or other world like force pulling them together, and she's like down for it. Like she doesn't mind, like, because it's like it feels so like new and good, and like again the honeymoon phase, like nothing feels wrong in the honeymoon phase. Like it's like just I think it describes the perfect feeling of like what she's trying to get across. And like yeah, it's just a fun song. It's like really vibey. The beat and like the sort of the switch up in the middle of the song is like really interesting, but it's like just an R&B, like low beat R&B like vibe in it. Yeah, it's just fun. Yeah, I think we're gonna see a difference in like change here. Obviously the first 5 tracks are very interesting, but this is more of like, this is going into their current relationship, so you're going to see just a completely different vibe of like energy and like beat and just lyrics, and which is really fun. I love when an album does this, like it cuts off to like something that's very new, so it doesn't really know how to talk about it, but it like talks about it in like such a positive and like interesting way with like lyrics.
Yeah.
The
next track is True Story, which is an interesting one. I think we could just play it. I want to mention like there's a track that was leaked of Ariana's called Fantasize. And I believe that the hook, like the part in the song where she's like, "You fantasized about you and I," kind of thing, is like kind of she reused it from that leaked track, and she posted on TikTok like a comment that she wanted to reuse
Do you
that
have it?
part of the track.
I have it here if you want.
Okay.
So it says, "Oh, this is so disheartening. I was going to come back to this hook to use it eventually. I don't know how people are still doing this, but please stop." Fuck leakers,
Yeah.
man. Fuck leakers.
It sucks because, like, yes, that version of the song that was leaked is never gonna be used again, but like, it just sucks because, yeah, like, she might want to reuse it for something else or do something else with it, and it's like, that is totally fine because that's what songwriting is. That's what producing is. Like, you always reuse stuff that you did before that never came to light, and it sucks to have things leaked and to have that ruined. But this song sounds a lot different than the leaked song, and I think she did that on purpose. Even though she reused a little bits of it lyrically, so I think it was kind of like a fuck you to the leakers. Like, you're never getting that song.
Who wakes up in the morning is like, I'm going to leak a song and I'm going to feel so fucking great about it. I'm going to take an artist's work that, like, they're not getting any compensation for. Their story might not be ready to be told, but I'm going to fucking tell them the world anyway because I'm such a good leaker person. Fucking love doing that. It's so annoying. Get a life, man. Sorry, it annoys me so much. It's like, how can you enjoy your life if you're fucking leaking music or art that isn't ready to be shown to the world?
Yeah, let me see. So this is what she said in her album interview. I actually had that hook from the batch of songs Max was working on for the Seth MacFarlane TV show that never happened. So that was like a sister song to Fantasize. A couple of these little seedlings existed before this album, and I was actually in the moment like, we might have to save some of these for when we do an album. And even though there was a version of it that was already on TikTok, I was like, it feels so important. I love it that much that I want to reclaim it and make out of it what I wanted to originally. I didn't want to let them win in that way, I guess. Everything, the production, the vocals, the lyrics, everything are the biggest changes. It was just like a shell. It was a seedling back then. It was a song about something completely entirely different. I even don't remember that one anymore. Yeah, it is like a kind of a fuck you to the leakers. It's like, I probably would have used that track on this record, but I made something completely different because I don't want you to ever hear that track because you leaked it.
Honestly, iconic from her.
But also the part where she mentions like Max Martin had written that hook for like the Seth MacFarlane TV show and then gave it to Ariana to use is like exactly proof of like, it's literally just a hook. I mean, there's a whole song built around it, but because it wasn't originally used for its intention, it was used for something else, and it doesn't matter. But if that part had been leaked, like if those ideas of Max's had been leaked, Ariana never would have been used them. So if you're leaking shit, you're like limiting creativity, and it sucks.
Preach.
Anyway, let's listen to the track.
Sorry, we're just ranting.
This is a long episode. Oops.
It is. It's gonna be. It's so long. But it's like, I love how she comes into this one. It's like slow, but then it gets like bad B, like so quick. That beat is. Oh, stop.
I think that this track, it's so like, I love the sound. But it like the vibe, we kind of talked a little about it before we listened to it, but it's pretty much like talking about the media, I think. Like she hates that, like, you know, this image of her and Ethan has like gone around as like homewreckers, and like she kind of just like is like, leave me alone.
Like I think there's like she does the best to describe it here. She says, it's kind of like, okay, I'll play the bad girl. Now here's your bad girl anthem. Like the media always want someone to hate, and like while we obviously things are like unsure about timeline, but like she's pretty much saying here that like she was cheated on. Then from the way the album lines up, it's like they met afterwards. So like the media's gonna hate who they hate, but like they know the real story. We don't know the real story. The album doesn't sometimes. It maybe doesn't fully describe the real story, but like you're never gonna know. But like the media are always gonna want to hate somebody hate. So no matter what she does, someone's gonna hate. But like she's playing into it. The fucking beat plays into it. Like the whole song is like bad girl energy, like bad bee energy, and it's like.
Well, I think it's interesting because like this track is kind of like, it's kind of like a little like fuck you to the media, and then like the next track, which is The Boy Is Mine, is like it is that bad girl energy, like in the other way. Like it's like a, it's almost like a bad girl anthem, like in terms of like a haha, the boy is mine kind of thing, which is exactly like who the media is trying to portray her to be. And so she's kind of doing that. It's like putting that track before this one. It's kind of like a little play, which I love. And I also, let's listen to it, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that next track.
I love how she says that, unproblematic.
I know. I love that.
So good. I love how it slows the beat down as well before she goes into that. So good.
I love that song so much.
I don't know about you, but I feel like I could just rule the world after that song.
Right?
It's so... I love her playing the villain, like not even the villain, but just like taking it in and being like, I can do it, like, fuck you. I don't know.
She's embracing the energy.
Yeah.
And there's this quote from her Amazon Music interview that's like, this is a very bad idea, I think, but there's a large group of my fans that really do love a bad girl anthem, and this is kind of an elevated version of that. And I'm like, so true. Like, I feel like every single Ariana album has that kind of like bad girl anthem, and it's always the fan favorite. So I'm glad it exists on this album too. Yeah.
She could do a really good 90s like R&B pop record.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish she would do one, like a full one.
Oh, I think this is one of my favorites on the I say that I've said that about so many of the records, so many of the tracks, but like this is one of my favorites.
I'm living for you because like I know how big of an Ariana fan you are, and like how maybe like unsatisfied you've been with like previous albums, and I'm like, yes, eat every single song up you can, because this is happy.
What I've been waiting for. The next track is Yes And. I think we're gonna skip listening to it just in the interest of time. Also because we did do a full-on analysis of it when it first came out. But I think the way that Yes And fits into this record is a little weird to me. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the sound is really different than a lot of the other tracks. And I think I said when it first came out that I didn't like Yes And very much, and I was worried for this record. I'm glad that I was proven wrong. But I think that it was released as the first single because of the, like, it being like a reply to the media, almost, and a reply to people questioning her and it wanting to be like bad bitch energy. I think the placement on the record as track 9 is probably right for what it is. I almost wish it was a standalone single versus on this record.
Like, I ultimately feel like it doesn't. I don't really, again, what you said, like, I can't figure out a place where it fits on the record, but I love what it messages. Like, I think Ariana, from the last time we heard from her, has been going through some weird ass shit. Like, people talking about her body and, like, everything like that. Like, literally, again, no one should comment on fucking anybody's body. Like, you don't know what the fuck's going on in anybody's life. But, like, just all this shit that was happening, like, I think it's just such a badass like vibe and energy and like lyrics to come with it, like say that shit with your chest, be your own best fucking friend, be your own fucking best friend, like. And then it's like the whole coming into it with like the rumors of everything going on. She was like, "Why do you care whose dick I ride?" Which is like fair, but like protected, sexy, discerning my time. Your energy is yours, mine is mine. My face is sitting. I don't need no disguise. Like, don't comment on my body. Do not reply. Like, it's really just like a fuck you to everybody. Like, she doesn't have to say anything. She doesn't have to like comment on anything because it's her life. It's like her whatever. Like, I'll never understand why people need the reason to comment on things. Like, but like it's like a perfect reply to it. But also, again, I think when you come from like a bad B energy to like something that sounds like you're so like, Yes Anne sounds like she's taking it all in and like hearing it all, and like this is a reply to it. But it's like you come from a song like The Boy Is Mine and it's like fuck you, like I'm gonna do what I want. But it's like this is also the same, but it's like it's taking all the information in from what people are saying and like replying to it. So it's like it's sort of like a contrast to like The Boy Is Mine. I don't know. So I don't really know where it fits. Like that's kind of where I vibe with it. Like if I was to choose, I said earlier, like I don't think this would have been the song that I'd put as a single, because it doesn't really describe it very well. Like it doesn't really give an album a vibe as much as like sort of other
I think
songs
that Eternal Sunshine should have been the single.
Oh my
If you
God,
want to
yeah.
pick a song that really like encapsulates the album in one song, that would have been it. But I think if you wanted to have a song that was gonna be catchy, it should have been Bye. And I feel like Yes and Experience like was trying to be like the catchy and also the encapsulates the album, and it honestly did neither. It was trying too
Yeah.
hard to do all of it that it just did none of it.
No, I agree with you. I love it, but
And
I do agree with you.
an actual good single that she chose is the next track. We Can't Be Friends, Wait for Your Love, which is the second single. It was released alongside the album. The music video is stunning, so if you haven't seen the music
The
video,
music video is beautiful. Yeah.
do that. But yeah, let's listen to it.
You'd understand me. We sit in silence.
Oh, it's the silence after silence is so beautiful.
The strings are so beautiful.
I think this is my favorite. Not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite.
Yeah, I feel like it's a popular favorite. I think it's a stunning track. It reminds me a little bit of Melodrama, like the sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you like about it?
So just before, I think obviously we're talking about singles before, and I think it's interesting because I think Eternal Sunshine, if it was a single, obviously would have had a music video, and I think the topic from this music video would have been in that. So I don't think this would have had a place to be a music video, or like it would have had a place to like be a single if it was Eternal Sunshine. So I'm really interested in see like maybe hopefully we find out more about why things were picked. But it's interesting because I'm glad that she'd done this for like she done the music video and the topics for this song, because I think it's, if there was ever a song to like hit the topic of what the album is about and like what it's referencing, is this song. I think it's so stunningly beautiful, and what you're saying about the strings and like the percussion and the production were like so stunning. And I think it's like it is lyrics more of like I just can't. It's so sad, like it's so sad, but it's so beautiful, and it's like I don't want to tiptoe, but I don't want to hide, but I don't want to feed this monstrous fire. So obviously she's talking, she's back on like sort of the old relationship, talking about like how things were and like how things have developed and like how things can't be what she maybe wishes they were, or like were able to be, but it's like you don't want to tiptoe, like you don't want to have to like tiptoe around the relationship. You don't want to have to worry about what you're saying and what you're doing, like, or hide who you are because of like how this was. Like I don't want to feed this monstrous fire. Like it was obviously a bad place in terms of like at the end. Just want to let this story die. Like she just wants to like let it be in the past. So like referring to the music video, obviously in the music video she's like in the place where like she wants to forget, like she goes to forget like the memories of her past relationship. So it's like a very beautiful song, like, especially tied to the music video.
It's interesting because it like the music video does do that justice. It's like that feeling of being stuck in this hurt and like not being able to get out of it. And it's like, you know, just wanting back what things used to be, almost like with the like I'll wait for your love kind of lyric. And I think that this song is beautiful, not like obviously like from Ariana's perspective, we're talking about what it's about from her perspective, but I think it's beautiful in the sense that it can be interpreted in so many different ways, from a friendship standpoint, from a relationship standpoint. You know, I think that you can find a way to relate to this song with the way that it's written and how it sounds, how much like it engages you with the production is absolutely stunning. I think that's what makes music what I think that's what I love about music. And this song like perfectly encapsulates that.
No, I agree.
But yeah, the next track is I Wish I Hated You, which is kind of like a ballad type song. I'll get in, we can listen to it and then we can talk a little bit about it. Yeah. Also, this part sounds like a phone ringing to me.
It does. No, why? No, God, now I'm gonna hear that constantly. Her vocals again. Oh, I just want to hear more in this style of her. It's the backing of that like sound.
Oh,
like
it's beautiful.
That chime, yeah. This is given really musical theatre, and I don't know how else to describe it.
No, I never thought about it, but now that you say that, I can see it.
The production on this is beautiful. The backing like chime and like it's so stunning.
Oh, it's so great. The song is beautiful, and the lyrics are quite simple. It's something that I think a lot of people talk about on a lot of their albums. It's the whole idea of like getting this grief, like getting over you would be just so much easier if I had like something to be angry about. But you know, like I'm gonna remember all the good parts too, and that's what makes it like 10 times worse. Yeah, I feel like it's such a common feeling, and it's such a good song.
No, yeah, it's like a very like not complex, like lyrically based. So it's like you've pretty much summed it up. Like it is. It's just like the electronic like infused like chime and like just vibe into it. It's like really beautiful, and it's just.
I literally cannot listen to this song because it sounds like a cell phone ring to me.
This is
but
like my second favorite
I'm
song.
just
You've
a little bit
ruined that for me.
I did not mean to ruin it. It just does. I didn't lie. Anyway, because you hear it too, so I'm not.
I'm sorry,
like,
viewers.
insane.
I'm really sorry. Now everybody on Ariana's whole like stats, it's like everybody turns the album off at the start. I wish I hated you just because of the Music Shack podcast.
It's Imperfect for You. Yeah, let's listen to it.
Okay.
Oh, this is not.
Got it an end.
There we go.
It's really like trippy and like soul like vibes.
I feel like this also kind of has a musical theater vibe.
It does, yeah. But you can also tell when Max Martin is on it.
Yeah.
You can tell when he wasn't on it previously and when he isn't on it now.
I love like the way that she sings Imperfect for You.
Imperfect,
if you know what I mean. I can't.
Like that
yeah,
way,
I was gonna say I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna do it badly, but you did it perfectly.
I'm gonna do it. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I love that. It's like so beautiful. It I don't know.
It's like a very like
Um,
hard song to describe. I think like it is very musical based.
mhm,
Like I think what you said some like is very like true, but it's like also
mhm.
interesting because Max Martin's back on this one, and it is like really it's not even poppy. Like it is more like trippy, like soul vibes. Like it's but
Yeah,
it's
I think it's more soul than pop, this one. It's
yeah
weird because like the sound is very cohesive in the album, but it's also like very different track to track. Like there's some that are very poppy, and then some that are very R&B, and then there's this that's like completely like off the cuff soul, like one song
like
that's
it's like
like this, but I
so
like it.
so weird because you did so the album like goes through so many different vibes. Like it is like dream pop, like bedroom pop, like soul, like electronic. Like it is very interesting, but like there is a pop vibe obviously across it. But this is probably the first song, but it isn't like pop isn't in like induced in it as in at all. Really, I don't know. I don't think. I think it
But
is
it's
more like
still
solely.
like really good.
Yeah, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Like it is genuinely like it is beautiful, and I think like I think when we get to the later half of the album, like the songs are probably closer to like my favorite ones. If we were to like pick out
Mm-hmm.
like a half of the album, I think the second half is more I relate to it more, or like not relate to lyrics is more like the whole album is interesting like lyrically, but like sound wise I think I relate to it more.
Like you like this, yeah, the second half
Yeah.
sound. I think I agree. I think I like the second half sound wise as well better than the first half. Um, and I feel like these last few tracks are interesting. Like they're kind of just like little like love songs almost, but they're they're happy. Like they're happy. Like that. There's almost like a happy um vibe in imperfect for you, and it's almost like a whole like it's almost like a self-acceptance song, I would say. Like it's a hey, like I'm all these things, like fucked up, anxious, too much, but like that's okay.
Yeah.
um and it's so interesting because at the start of the record she was feeling really insecure, like in the intro track, even like she was feeling really insecure.
Yeah.
And so to like end on this note of like, hey, like, you know, all these things that I am, like, that's totally fine. And like it just shows such growth throughout the record. And I think that's why albums are so great to me, when they tell complete stories. And I love like that we've gone from those moments through this record. And the next song is kind of similar, Ordinary Things. It's pretty much just talking about like all of the great things you get to share with people that you love in life. And um again, that there's just like a happy sense to that, and it's 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 good.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, so with that, let's listen to the last track, which is Ordinary Things.
We could go pop all the champagne in California. No matter what we do, there's never gonna be an ordinary thing time. No matter what we
Jeez, how big up to new singer songwriter Nonna. Big deal with the feature coming up.
Come home and I'd see him and it just gets off that train. You know, it's not that we never fought.
This is so
No, we
sweet.
don't feel comfortable doing it. We're in the wrong place. Get out.
I love the end of that.
To
I
end
love,
a project like that is so beautiful.
and it's interesting. I saw someone say this on Twitter, but the first line of the album in the intro track is, how can I tell if I'm in the right relationship? And the last part is Nona saying,
Ah,
and it, never go to bed without kissing goodnight. That's the worst thing to do. Don't ever do that. And if you can't, you're in the wrong place. And it's almost like answering the question in the very last line. And it's almost like I feel like this song, as much as it's a love song, it's not really like specifically for one person. It's like a love song to every single person who has been there for her,
yeah.
through all like the challenging times in her life. And um like that includes her family. That's why like Nona's on this song, and that includes her friends, and that includes her partner. Um And I feel like this song is almost like, especially with the advice we get from Nonna at the end, it's almost like especially because it's the last track of the album, it's like you should listen to your friends and family when they tell you that you're like not in the right place, because I wasn't, and now I'm finding myself, and these are the people who know you best. And I think that's such a sweet message.
See, I wonder if you're saying that, if the whole topic of like eternal sunshine comes into play here, like if the album is looped because of like the topic of like the fact that, like, say after this album is like them getting their memory wiped and it's like back to the start, and that's why she goes back into place of like how do you know if how do I know if I'm in the right place or whatever. Like, that is so interesting. And like I guess it kind of comes down to like what her perception of it was, but like to end it on like a thing where it's like a definite like get out, or like definite like instruction to do, like if so it's like a definite instruction of like what to do if you were in that position. Then she goes into questioning it the start of the album as well. It's like really interesting.
I think it is interesting, and it goes back to what I was saying at the start of the episode. It was like Ariana has not been single really. Like, she, like, ever since like even her very first album, like she's been in relationship. Like she dated Big Sean and Ricky and Mac Miller and Pete Davidson, and then Dalton, and then now Ethan. Like, I think she just goes from relationship to relationship and she doesn't learn, and this is almost like her, like, I think the idea of eternal sunshine, it's like this is her saying I need to stop this cycle, and like her telling herself, giving her the instruction book of like, this is how you know, so like figure it out, girl. Which I think is important, and such a good message for the record, I think. Jack, what are your overall thoughts of the record?
I think it's really special. I think what we've got here is something that, as you said, like I think she has like writing credits on pretty much all of the songs, right, or all of them. And I think it's she has so this is like a sound she's been forming, and it seems like she's found it. And while I don't think it's like some of the, like, overall I don't think it's like perfect lyrically, but I think it's like probably the strongest we've seen from Ariana, and it's really special because like she seems in her place. Like, she seems like she's found a spot to like be happy, to like come back at like haters and come back at people like saying shit about her. Like, she seems like she's secure in herself, like mentally and stuff, like, and sonically, to be like, nah, like I can prove myself, and I can prove everybody else wrong. Like, and I think from what you get from these certain tracks, like, and I definitely think there's like favorites over other ones. Probably like the later half of the album is like definitely my favorite, but it's like the way she says these things in the way she like talks about the story of like referencing this film is like really beautiful. And if it is ending off ordinary things, going into like intro, like with that topic in mind, is like genuinely so beautiful to like round it off in that way. And also to what you've said, like if it's trying to like pretty much be there for herself and like tell herself like this is something that you keep repeating, like this is really how to like sort of not repeat it, or like how to not to get out, but like how to like sort of like come out of it better than you did go into it. And I think it's stunning. It talks about so many important like topics, and like sort of like makes her come to front with like some of who she is, and like maybe something that was really uncomfortable for her to do. But I think this is my favorite from Ariana that I've ever heard. And while I've only heard like a small selection of like full discographies from Ariana from certain albums, like I think this is like sonically like one of probably our strongest project. Like, I think this is better than Thank You Next. Well, Thank You Next is like something that holds like such a severity in my heart, but like just because of like topics and stuff. But this is like stunning, and this is like more important coming from you. Like, this is like I am so interested to hear like how it comes across for you, because you're you're not super being happy with like recent projects, and like this is like something that I'm waiting for you to be obsessed and love. So how did you find it?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I talked about this on the podcast before. Like, when you say I haven't been happy with super recent projects, I mean, I loved every single one of Ariana's records until Positions. I did not like Positions. I felt that like Positions, it didn't really have any meaning. I mean, it was just a bunch of songs about sex, and it was like, okay. Like, the reality is that like Thank You Next was such a deep album, and like I was expecting that from her more, and I think that when I was like a kid listening to music, like I was fine with songs that were just like whatever. But I think as you get older you look for like solace in music a little bit more. And so I was kind of like really disappointed, and I felt like, you know, her fandom was just like a bunch of kids, and it was just like she wasn't thinking about her like original fans as much, and so I just kind of was like, it's time to move on. And then she went off and did Wicked, and I genuinely think that that was just like a pandemic phase. Positions, and again, I pretend it didn't happen, because if we went from Thank You Next to this album, I would be stunned. I think that this, like, when I think about my rankings of all of Ariana's albums, this is number one, and it might just be recency bias, but I cannot think of another record of Ariana's. I think Thank You Next and Sweetener come close. I think Sweetener is probably the closest, actually, to like being a record with a complete story, and to this Eternal Sunshine. And I think that an album is only an album when it tells you something as a whole. It can't just be a bunch of tracks put together in an order, because then it's not really an album. It's just a bunch of good songs. And like, I say this about every album that we listen to on this podcast. Like, if it is just a bunch of songs put together, then it's a good album, but it's never going to be a great album. And that's only if I like every single one of those songs too. And this to me is a great album, because like you can see growth. And an album doesn't need to present like a growth. It can present like a decline in a character as well, but it needs to have some kind of story. And I think that she wrote this very intentionally, and as we know, she's clearly been writing other music throughout her entire break, but she chose songs that should be on this album very intentionally to tell a complete story, to show, like, to have this album be like my absolute favorite. I think Ariana not having Scooter and having a lot more freedom with her music, being able to produce her own music, is something that has done her really well. She has such good music taste that when she can produce her own music and decide her own sound, she sounds more comfortable and more happy in the music. And I think that's what makes an artist incredible. And I think she's done it with this. I am so happy, because I was so worried that it was going to be awful and I was going to have to come on here and shit talk her when, like, I feel like I can't do that, but thank God I didn't have to.
That is so exciting to hear. And I mean, definitely by the fact that this episode is probably going to be like an hour and 40 minutes long, I think it determines, like, I think it shows how much we really wanted to like go into depth and like talk about the album and like why it sort of resonated, or like sort of why we like sort of loved it as much. And I'm just glad to hear that. Like, that is so good, because I'm happy. I don't know, I guess it's like sort of hard to go from like an album that you sort of really do not connect with at all to like something you're not really sure of how it's going to go, and then for it to be like so good is really like a nice surprise. So I hope you all enjoyed. This will be cut down a lot more, to be fair. I say an hour and 40 minutes, but it'll probably be like an hour because of how much I need to cut out, like, song wise. But it might be around there. But
if you made it to the end, like a freaking marathon episode, thank you for listening. I think that we'll do this kind of system when albums come out of like especially ones that we want to like do a deep dive of, like listening to every track. I think it's long, but I think it's a good way of going through it. If you guys like this format better than our old format, let us know. Or if you like the old format better, let us know too, because we'll also go back to that if people like that better.
Yeah, and honestly, it might be it just might be a normal podcast episode next week, unless something happens with this Disney Plus Taylor Eras Tour release. I don't know. There's like so many weird theories about it, and like so many weird like things going on, but I doubt there's going to be anything. So it'll just be probably another podcast episode next week. But we will see what happens, and then we'll also be doing more of like artist breakdowns and stuff, like first time things, experiences, and more album breakdowns, especially with one coming in a month and a bit that we're really excited about. But yeah, just thanks so much for being here, and I really appreciate it. And Ray does as well, of course. Like, we both appreciate it. But yeah, just thanks so much for listening and watching. And yeah, let us know your thoughts and everything below, and your favorite song, and yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for
thanks being
listening.
here. Take care.
Bye.